three key facts that we don't know about you that you want people to know.
Okay. Okay. Not to start simple. Okay, so I'm a father to a dog. You do know that. I'm a father to a young dog named Jensen, named after Jensen Button, the ex-Formula One champion. He's useful for marketing as well as for comfort. He's a good friend.
He's been at
I
YMS, hasn't he?
am hey.
He's been at YMS a couple of times.
Oh, I bring him everywhere because he actually is useful for marketing. I'm lying.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I I'm a concert clarinetist and a pianist as well. Back I had a scholarship to school back in the day when I was a little kid. That's the long black one with,
fantastic.
with the silver bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and also I don't just didn't just do this. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done quite a few things over my time. I managed a band at one point. I've set up an art exhibition at one point. I've done a black tie ball, all back in the past before,
Wow.
find our calling.
Fun. And Chris, what sort of art was it?
What's up? Do you know what? It was interesting. It's similar to what I do now. I'd spotted I'd come into a collective of football artists and animators. And footballers have a lot of money. And where I saw this link was to put on an exhibition for them. We got Sky Sports to get involved and a few other people. And yeah, I managed to get the footballers and the artists all into the same place.
Fantastic. Interesting. Well, look, Chris, on that, I want to take us back to the very start of your journey into working like with brands, into the marketing space. When you were growing up, can you recall, I guess, the first brand that had an impact on your life that you felt a real affinity towards, that you wanted to get involved with, that you loved and maybe that you still love today? Yeah, what brands come to
I,
mind?
I mean, I suppose the biggest marketing campaigns, the biggest impression that I can think of being made of me as a child was probably still Pepsi and Coca-Cola, right? Whether it was Michael Jackson in Pepsi adverts,
Yeah.
or whether it was the Coca-Cola or audio trigger that still remains today. But then there were ones that you don't get so much for kids anymore. Confectionery is not there anymore. There was a finger of fudge is just enough, right? That was a
Yeah,
famous
yeah,
one that's
yeah.
still in my milk,
Showing your
the
age
Milky
there.
Bars for me. There was a lot, and you know what? There's one just literally from this morning. I don't know whether you're a football fan, Richard. It's the second time I'm mentioning football. I'm going to sound obsessed,
All
but there
right.
was an advert back in the 80s for milk, where a couple of Liverpudlian kids are at the fridge, and he says, "I'll only be good enough to play for Accrington Stanley." He
Yeah,
says, "Who are they?" Exactly. Right.
exactly.
Liverpool have just been what's the word? Drawn against Accrington Stanley in the next round of the FA Cup
Oh,
today. There you go. That's
Was
very
the campaign
pertinent.
was the campaign referenced or was,
No, but I bet you it will be.
yeah, for
I
sure. I
think it
remember
will
that.
be.
Remember it very vividly. Chris, it'd be great to hear about your path into the youth marketing world. What did that journey look like? What was it that drew you into working in the youth space? Yeah, it'd be great to hear.
Um, Well, I was in a completely different sector. I was selling a lot of financial and data solutions, all about driving efficiencies into businesses, more conventional, for more conventional businesses, banks, etc. Um, and just looking at efficiencies, and it just struck me about marketing, about the efficiency that you must gain by targeting those people that are new into the economy, that have lesser brand allegiance. Um, it was one of those areas I looked at this and wondered why people were doing things one way. And youth marketing makes so much sense. And it makes so much sense not just for the brands saying, here are some sales cycle targets that are ready and here is, ready for you to convert and draw a lifelong relationship with. But this makes sense to the younger people as well, who are generally, ignored by society or ignored by these brands. If we can push some of their attention towards them, it can only be a good thing on both sides, right?
Absolutely. And the path to lead you towards to digging where you are today. How did that evolve?
So, so uh, digging came from a visibility that universities were looking to welcome students to help
Mm.
them. This is a huge day, right? Certainly, we can all remember our first day of university. Nervous day, arrive there and just want to afford a warm welcome. At the same time, these universities are getting approached by brands saying, "Hang on, you've got hundreds of thousands of students coming to your premises. Can we reach them?" So there was a need for one centre point to deal with all of those inquiries. and maintain a certain level of quality. And there was a need to help those universities and accommodation providers give a good welcome to their students. So you see two distinct needs, and for me, very obviously, then there becomes a need for a company like Dig In, which said we will provide that service. So here we sit now, and it's 10 years now we've been going. I've scarily found out. We're now up to about 500,000 boxes every year. So that's 500,000 people arrive at university, walk into their bedroom, and find a digging box there with samples and offers from all sorts of brands. It's great.
Fantastic.
We do enjoy it.
That's 10 freshers. That's 10 freshers. Is that right? 10 freshers years. And
10 freshmen. That means that at this moment in time, there are about 3.5 million consumers walking around in the UK that received a digging box.
for me, that's phenomenal. That's your strap line just there. And for those that may be unfamiliar with digging at the moment, it's welcome boxes for students from brands. That's right.
Correct. So we curate a box of samples from brands. So in there we've had HSBC, Red Bull, Coca-Cola. GiftGaff have always been a great supporter of ours and been putting their SIM cards in. So we offer a service where they put their product or they put their discount code or what have you into our box. And then we arrange with the universities to ensure that they are placed into the bedrooms waiting for the students when they arrive on day one. So free service for the universities, paid service for the brands. But it's I think we might come to this later, but it is 100% attention. One of my other strap lines is that we deliver 500,000 opens and 500,000 click-throughs.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, right? Because
Gary,
they all open the box and they will all engage with the products trying to reach them in there.
absolutely spot on. Well, I know we're going to come to that shortly. But Chris, we've known each other for many years. I know you've been a part of our YMS event, and we've worked together on many other projects. You've always been very open around your struggles with ADHD, and so on and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about that, maybe for those that are unfamiliar with your own personal story?
So I'm late diagnosed. If I'm going to be completely transparent, had a few bouts of depression and struggles. I'm going to go without speaking about it too long because the reason I mention this because it's very stereotypical. I absolutely breezed through school and everything. Found it super easy. With last minute revision. Went to university and without that structure, bombed, and then sort of just fell through different jobs. I think for a long while after that, trying while finding my calling. Anyway, the late diagnosis came, and it just makes everything make so much more sense. Really, it's challenging for me some days to even start working, and of course, you beat yourself up on that. Or I struggle with some really simple tasks, but I've also got skills that I believe are rooted in the ADHD, which non-neurodiverse people may not have. It's been fascinating. It's been absolutely fascinating for me. I'm very, very passionate about it now because we don't all fit into a box. They may call me neurodiverse because I'm ADHD and maybe autism counts as being neurodiverse, etc., etc. But we don't have to attach a label to everything. I think the answer probably is that none of us fit in a box, and that's maybe by the world is evolving the way it is, I suppose.
Yeah. It's around how ADHD has played into your entrepreneurial strengths,
Oh,
creative strengths in in finding dig in.
I did want to say one thing which I came across and I checked before we spoke. And there was so if you don't mind me looking down, so they reckon it's about 3 to 4% have ADHD in the UK at the moment. Amongst successful entrepreneurs, there's a Barclay review which says the number's closer to 30%, 30.
Mm.
So there you go. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know so many entrepreneurs. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's
there are,
not uncommon.
yeah, and I think we are all unusual that see new opportunities, new ways to do things, and set up businesses, much like yourselves, you know.
Yeah, and I think what's really clear from speaking to you, from knowing you for so many years, is that the passion that you've got for what you do. Not only just commercially, but empowering students on their freshers, making them feel welcome. Giving that sense of comfort. It always rings true that for you and your team that it's something that's hugely important for you all. Yeah, it's very powerful.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that comes through because it is absolutely true. And you know what? It's a strange thing that I almost get a little nervous whenever we see social media and people with the actual boxes, and we see this. I can't believe it's actually happened. It's from my room or from the office. It's quite an imaginary event to think about. 500,000 people. That's like two and a half Glastonburys, right? It's and going yeah, and when you go to the warehouse and you see a whole row of, whatever it is, pot noodles or protein bars or what have you. Do you remember going back to our age again? If you remember the final scene in Indiana Jones when they're wheeling the it just goes on forever, honestly.
Listen,
Someone dropped out my trousers.
I want to start, coming to the factory once, sometime. And Chris, we've touched upon it just briefly before, but I want to go into it a little bit deeper now around the attention economy that you spoke about. Working in the marketing industry, we speak about this a lot. How have you
Yeah.
seen this trend evolve? And again, you have touched upon it, but it tying very much into digging success. Be great to hear your
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're living in, when we talk about the attention, we're living in a world full of incredible distractions, right? And there was again, there's another study out that talks about the cost of attention has gone up 900 sorry, ninefold, 900% over a decade. And that's actually some old data. And we think about this, we're, 10 years ago, maybe we didn't have so many, it's notifications on our phones and everything, all right? I mean, are we watching TV adverts or are we getting up and walking out? And actually, what really happens here is not only are we paying less attention to all those different channels, but it's incredibly difficult to measure. It's incredibly difficult to power. So where are we going to place our resources? So attention is a diminishing. It's there's a wealth of information in the world, and there's a massive lack of attention. So the more information there is, and we all become content creators. So we're now not just competing against Microsoft or Apple or Nike's advertisements. We're competing against another billion content creators, right? Add on to that, what we know is that unfortunately, hate speech and aggression and anger drives engagement. So playing the fair game as we have to as a commercial enterprise and trying to get noticed in that environment is insanely difficult. And what it actually requires is not necessarily people with just marketing degrees and equivalent, but this is now an incredibly complicated maths equation that needs to be built. How much attention am I getting for my money?
Mm,
Then, when you add in the ideation and the creation and the subcontractors and the time it is taking, we're investing into creating, let's say, a piece of content for Instagram with its different rules and different algorithms to Twitter, the old Twitter and Facebook, etc. That if you start to consider not just the money we're putting in, but the time that we're putting in, I've seen some places say that 50% of marketing spend now goes into planning and trying to measure. So you come back to what we do,
yeah.
and we deliver attention. I will say there's 500,000 people, we'll give them the undivided attention. Um,
Okay, so the
and
process of getting the box, seeing the box, opening the box, taking things out of the box, looking at each item, it's so yeah, it's incredible.
yeah, so what I do struggle with is how to convey this because if I could write that equation, and believe me, I'm a maths geek, I've tried, I should be able to prove that the amount of attention we deliver per penny spent is huge.
Yeah.
In fact, it's about quarter of the price of a first class stamp to get guaranteed 100% engagement with a student for us.
Okay.
I
And
don't know what it says about the price of a first class stamp. It's gone up. It's crazy.
yeah, who can afford to post anything first class these days? Like so,
Yeah.
um, and I guess that is it. Like you said so explicitly, it's so hard to gain anyone's attention for such a significant amount of time, and you're able to guarantee what you're calling opens and clicks. It's a very unique offering for today's
This
world.
is, this is, absolutely. It's, as I say, Dentsu are doing some focus on it. This is about eye tracking eyeballs. There's so much money going into trying to understand real performance, whether it's online or on the TV, et cetera, et cetera. I wish people understand I put a box in front. I can hit somebody with the attention I can get. Yeah, it's
Literally,
got a
or a
weight.
million of them. Um, and Chris, if you could look back at your, let's say like your younger self and see what, what you're doing today, the impact you're having on, the next generation of young people growing up and so on. What advice would you maybe have given yourself or would like to give yourself?
You see, the thing is, the myself that grew up when I did, I, I wish I was a little more empowered to take more risks, to not be afraid of failure. I think it was still on a very standard education, you know, degree, sensible job career. And certainly for somebody like me, but perhaps for everybody, there needs to be a bit more. It's such a British thing, isn't it? If you can imagine going, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" An astronaut, or aim a bit lower. It's that kind of Britishness, and I wish we didn't have that so much.
Yeah,
If I was growing up in this decade, if I was growing up now, oof, I don't know. I think the future is going to be about flexibility.
which is about flex.
There is a series of books following Homo sapiens, which I'm very into. I can't remember which one it is, Homo Deus, but it talks about, round the corner, we've got three sci-fi events coming at a rate of knots, right? There was literally robotics, biotech, and AI. These are things that made up the Terminator franchise, right? These are now
Yeah,
genuinely
yeah.
really, they're coming all at the same time. We don't know what the world looks like in 10 years. We really don't. So, um, and I do think we're very unaware of what's coming, very unprepared. It's going to be exciting, but yeah.
Hugely exciting, like a few years ahead. Some people know what it looks like, that's for sure. Some people know, but
Yeah, there might be one or two out there.
two for sure. Um, Chris, as we wrap things up, young people, students, 1624s are at the heart of what we do at Pion and at our YMS event. Um, what do you feel the biggest challenge for young people today is growing up in the world in which we do? What are the biggest challenges that you feel that they're facing?
I, I'm very concerned about this sort of post-truth world. I'm very concerned about where people are able to get good information and reliable information, how we're being broken, repeatedly finding ways to distinct ourselves and separate ourselves from one another. I am, as a white man, I understand that some of the challenges of being young white man, but I'm deeply, deeply concerned about the sort of move in toxic masculinity. Um,
Mm.
you can see where it's coming from, and it's you can see where these problems are going. So I was supposed to say something positive, wasn't I? It's
No, no,
deeply challenging.
listen. It's interesting to get your perspective on it for sure, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you said. Um,
I honestly think it is. I mean, look, I wish, and what I'd love to do with digging is, I wish we'd be a bit more French. I wish we get 60,000 students marching on Parliament saying that this isn't right. Our rents are too high, our future prospects, to 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 buy properties is too much, our fees are too high. The French would be breaking windows and walking down the Champs-Élysées, I imagine. In one sense, I wish the young people would get a little bit more angry and rather than talking about themselves about the unfair deal, start making some noise. It was young people that fought against Vietnam and for women's voting rights. I'm past that point when I go marching. It's down to the young people to go and do it. Um, but yeah, the rest of it is kind of down onto us as whether it's as business leaders or whether it's the government. We really, really do need to start paying attention to the next generation come through. We certainly do. Okay, let's bring it back to football teams. We always make sure we've got some youth coming through in our football teams, right? It's important. Let's pay attention to
I
them.
think that what you said is very true. It's like the people that I imagine that maybe watching like this video or this short or listening or working with you or I, they're the ones that will be able to directly impact what the future holds for young people today, and it's up to us as leaders in the space to make those positive actions, for sure.